My name is Julie Pearson Little Thunder. Today is Tuesday, November 2nd, 2010, and I'm interviewing Mike Larsen as part of the Native Artists Project sponsored by the Oklahoma Oral Histories Research Program at OSU. I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with me, Mike. I was privileged to interview you for Southwest Art many years ago, and it's really nice to check back in and see how your art and career have grown.
Thank you.
You were born in Dallas and spent some of your early years there and in Wynnewood, Oklahoma?
Well, I was born in Dallas, and pretty much immediately we moved to Wynnewood, Oklahoma, and stayed there until 1957, 56, when we all went to Amarillo, Texas, and I started a junior high school there. Went through high school in Amarillo.
Your maternal grandparents, I guess, played a pretty important role in your life. How did they impact you?
Well, my mother's parents lived in Wynnewood, and I lived with them. My brother and I lived with them for a while. I'm not exactly how long, but 2 or 3 years we lived with them. And then were reunited with my mother. She had to stay in Dallas and work. And they were very influential, I think, in my life. A farm couple, and they were elderly when I lived with them. I was very happy about that time.
So you got to do quite a few chores and...
I got to do pretty much whatever I wanted to.
Oh, I see. What was your first sort of art experience that you remember as a young child?
As a young child, I don't remember art experiences as a young child. I can't bring anything to mind as a child.
Your tribe is Chickasaw. Was that on your mom or your dad's side of the family?
My dad's side.
Did you have any exposure to them when you were young, or
To
your dad's side of the family?
No, my dad left us when I was a baby, actually, and so I didn't spend any time with him until I was a teenager. So there was no relationship there, or no contact with the tribe until I made it on my own as a teenager.
Let's see. How about junior high art, high school art? Were you taking some classes then?
Well, I was really getting into art. I was doing a lot of drawing on my own, junior high and high school. And I was fortunate in high school that as a senior, like everybody did, I took an easy course because I needed an easy credit. So everybody was taking art class. And so this art class at Tascosa High in Amarillo offered pretty much unrestrained periods of creativity, whatever we wanted to do, and all the materials that we could, hope to find. So it was very enlightening. And I went from high school and into college, and since I didn't have a clue about what I wanted to do, I majored in art.
Okay, so you had enjoyed your art classes, but there were other interests that you had. And...
Yeah, she was blonde and Baptist.
Okay. I read that you had a bout with polio as a child. Did that affect the way you sort of saw or experienced things around you?
It's hard to define exactly how my thinking or my experiences might have been changed by that. As I was naturally right-handed. I had polio when I was 3, and it affected my right arm and hand. And so I had to develop my left hand, and everything that I have done since then, creatively or manipulatively, have been with my left hand. And which changed my thinking, as I understand.
Yes, I was going to say, because we're cross-wired a little bit. I was wondering if it sort of impacted your sensibility, maybe, in a way, too.
My sensibilities?
Yeah.
I mean, the way I see and look at things?
Right, sensitivity to things, or,
You know, it's difficult to say from my point of view. You know, people might look at me and say, well, you see things this way or that. But I can't perceive that myself. I do tend to look at my paintings and see that since I do paint left-handed, that my paintings, the people in my paintings tend to go that way.
Be moving in that direction.
In that direction, which is interesting because when I look at the painting, they are moving to the right, but from the people in the painting's point of view, they're moving to the left.
I see.
Do you see? I think that's kind of interesting.
That is really interesting. Once you enrolled, was it the junior college in Amarillo? Once you
Yes.
and started off, I guess, taking art classes.
Yes.
Do you remember a point at which did that nurture your interest in art, or was that also a good experience?
It was a really good experience. We had a very good director of the art department. He was from Washington, D.C., a very strange man, but he was very creative, and he got me into sculpture, which I had never really experienced. And again, we had all the materials that we could use and models, and you know, it was quite fun, but very, very enlightening again.
So you were actually doing clay figures, full
Clay figures,
what kinds of-
we had models that we would, you know, do busts and things like that, and so it, you know, provided me with that opportunity real quickly in a school setting. I still had to do my academics, and I was not very good at that. But the art building that they had was just filled with wonderful things. It's where I tended to spend all my time. That's why my academics were so bad. I think that's pretty common too.
Yes, I think it is too. In terms of subject matter, did you experiment at all with any native subject matter in junior college?
No, back in those days, I wasn't very much into anything Indian. That didn't come into my mind, you know, to get into that. There were too many things offered, and pretty much the models that we had to deal with then in school were not from anything that I might want. They were, you know, given to us to work with. So it was a variety of people, which was good to do. You know, different forms,
Right.
different kinds of people. And my favorite people to portray in sculpture, quite frankly, were black people because of the unique design of their skulls and you know, facial features.
Did you have live models?
Yes.
At the, Great. And then you decided to go on to the University of Houston?
Yes, I went to the University of Houston because there was this outstanding sculpture teacher there, and so I kind of was moving in that direction. I was going to make my life as a sculptor, and so I went to Houston, stayed there for a year, learned a lot. He really got on to us, not about what we knew, but about what we didn't know, and we had, my favorite model was this enormous German girl who modeled for us, and I still remember her. But she was a good model. Took a lot of clay.
Well, and yes, and artists do. There's an advantage to working with forms in that way. So, had you at that point at University of Houston, had you saved some money to go to school there, or
no? I worked as a short order cook, and would cook, you know, and so I was only taking 12 hours per, and kind of got in my way a time or two, but it was also good for me in other respects. But kind of keeps you settled, you know.
a lot of life to sort of life experience?
Didn't have any time to go and play, get in trouble.
Had you, were you experimenting at all with native subject matter at the University of Houston?
Not at that time. Again, we were dealing with the models that we had available.
Right.
And I doubt that this wonderful instructor that I had ever seen an Indian. And so it didn't come into play until after I got out on my own.
Mm-hmm. Were you already sort of thinking about yourself as wanting to pursue a career in art at that point?
Yes, pretty much that was all that I was looking forward to. and I have kind of tunnel vision, it seems like, when I get onto something, so that just would not go away and just got stronger. And I did not graduate from the University of Houston, or I have not graduated from college. In my last year there, senior, I went in to see my counselor, and he had me lined up for 18 hours of academics in my last semester. So I just said the hell with it, and I left, and moved north, came back up to Oklahoma, and started doing street shows.
And what were these sort of just in the city? Were they in the region? How did you choose your shows?
The street shows, they started in the city because I couldn't afford to travel. Again, working and then working all week, doing paintings, and on weekends doing shows. And it gradually developed out regionally. And it got to where in the mid-70s I was traveling all the way to St. Louis or places like that to go to weekend shows.
What were some of the benefits of doing shows like that?
Provided me with an income doing what I wanted to do. And I was fortunate that I was able to listen to what people said about the things that I was showing. And a lot of people can't do that, or won't.
So you were able to take feedback.
Won't listen. Yeah, there were some instances where people said things to me which didn't work out. But generally, if you listen to what people say when they think you're not the artist, you can learn a lot about your work. And over those years I learned, this was interesting, I learned what would sell and what wouldn't. So I kind of worked myself into a pattern, and at the same time you could say it was kind of a fix, that I was painting what I knew would sell, so I was not improving. Do you see?
Yes.
So an event happened in 1990. Martha and I had been married, and my studio burned, and that was in Oklahoma City. I think from then I didn't do any more street shows, and I didn't do any more prepared canvases, the things that I knew would sell. That went away. I started experimenting. Threw away my palette that I was using at the time, developed new colors, started painting larger, got away from set style. Up until that time I was still locked into what you might call the Andrew Wyeth school, very realistic, tight, not much color, earth colors, earth tones. A lot of Indian subjects then, but they were still the same colors. And I think color was the greatest advancement that I made coming away from that fire.
Yeah, I had read that was just a real pivotal point for both of you. So at some of the street shows you were doing some Indian subject matter, but very realistic.
Mostly Indian subjects, yeah.
Fully developed landscape, sort of, or?
Well, it was interesting. Went through a developmental phase. Coming into the 80s, the paintings that I were doing were figurative, but with not much background. Martha and I started going out to Santa Fe and like that to shows, and wonderful people out there, but also wonderful landscapes.
Right.
And so almost accidentally, I'm sure I thought about it a little bit, the landscapes started creeping into the paintings. And for a period of time, the people went away and they were just landscapes. And then gradually the people came back in and I was able to combine the two.
That's interesting to know. You went, you made a decision to go to the Art Student League when you were 36, I
Yeah.
think. I'd like to talk a little bit about that period, just because it's, of course, exciting to be in New York, but also challenging, I imagine. How did you support yourself out there? How many?
Well, luckily, I was making a pretty good living on the street, going to festivals and shows, and had saved up a good amount of money, and went to New York, went to the Art Students League. The interesting thing about the Art Students League is it is a art school, but they don't care if you come to class. They don't grade you. They don't do anything. You come if you want to. If you don't, that's fine. It's a monthly, you pay your fee monthly. Select your teachers. Your fee is based on how many teachers you want to abide. And so I have always been reasonably disciplined. And so that kind of suited me. I only missed 2 days while I was up there, and that was because I had the flu.
Wow.
But I have always felt like I learned more from being in New York and from being able to go to the Metropolitan Museum than I did at school. Well, I learned a lot in the school. I learned a lot about technique and quality of paint and things like that. The only problem that I had at the Art Students League was that I was required to paint in oils. Oils really get on me. So I was glad to get home for that reason, so I could go back to acrylics.
Okay, so you found them just kind of, you were sensitized to them a little bit?
They irritate me.
I see, yeah.
I love oil paintings. They have a certain look. I mean, nothing looks like an oil painting. But they irritate me, and I discovered that I'm quite a messy painter. I get it all over me.
Right.
Talking to people and reading and listening and this and that and the other, oils stay in suspension on your skin all day long. And so consequently you absorb a lot of very bad chemicals. Mm-hmm. So I was glad to do away with that. We discovered a number of people, incredible teachers up there who would paint in gowns and gloves and masks and hats because over their lifetime as an artist they had absorbed so much lead and so much cadmium that they're probably dead and gone by now. I didn't want that to happen to me.
I know that David LaFalle was one of your teachers that you
Yes,
mentioned.
primarily, yes.
And very much a realist, sort of, just a strong realist, I guess, not a hyper-realist. Were you working in a more realistic mode while you were in New York?
Yeah, while I was there, you could pretty much say I was painting like David LaFalle. And I have a couple of paintings here from that period that from a distance, if you were to look at them, you might think, oh, that's a LaFalle. But David's view of art and his intentions for what he was doing are not mine, and mine are not his. And what I'm after is much more vibrant and loose and expressive, I think, than what David does. He's a great artist, there's no doubt about it. But the world's filled with those. And the best ones who go off on their own.
Right. I was wondering, in one of your signature stylistic devices, of course, are the sort of larger-than-life hands on some of your characters. Were you familiar with Paul? Had you seen the Paul Pletka show in the 80s in Oklahoma City?
I saw it in Norman.
You saw it in Norman.
At the Fred Jones.
Yeah. Was it an influence, or were you
No.
already sort of,
Oh, this all started when I was going to the University of Houston,
okay,
and I was going to be, this wonderful sculptor.
yeah,
And like all of the other students, we were really studying ancient sculpture, so that we could utilize it in what we were doing. Well, naturally, you would look at Rodin and Michelangelo, and the piece that comes to mind immediately is the Young David by Michelangelo.
mm-hmm.
The hands are enormous.
Yep, I can see.
And look at the Rodin pieces. The hands are huge. And so naturally, when I was going to Houston, all the pieces I did had really big hands. I have made my life as a painter. We do sculpture. But that idea just flowed easily into painting.
Gotcha.
And it came right from Houston. And I look at what Paul Pletka is doing. He's still alive, I guess. I'm
I
not
think
sure.
so.
They're wonderful, but people have compared me to Pletka, and I just don't see it myself.
Well,
I find his paintings very black.
I think they are very sort of somber. In mood, etc.
Yeah.
And I was thinking the other thing that goes with that is, those hands don't look good unless something happens with the arms too. The arms get extended a little bit, and
It's interesting. We did a series of paintings with the Chickasaw peoples, 48 paintings of their living elders,
right.
and we picked up really quickly, Martha and I, that a lot of these people, some of them they were all in their 80s or more, some in their 90s. One was 104. That as people grow older, they diminish in height because of their backbones and all this kind of stuff. Well, you take all these people, this wonderful woman, who is one of my favorite paintings of that group that we did.
Mm-hmm.
She is shorter than me, but at one time she was taller. Well, her arms and her hands, she could reach down and touch her knees. Do you see? Wonderful large hands. But a mistake a lot of people do if they were to paint somebody like that, well, they'd raise those arms up just a little bit. I mean, it doesn't look right, they're too long. They're not. They're natural. You look at not phenomenons, but natural elements of nature like that, and apply them to painting, and it just works great.
That's really interesting. And of course, sometimes I'm thinking about pieces I saw even many years ago in San Dimas at the Cowboy and Indian Artist Show, where if a character has their arms out and they're these long arms, they remind you of wings, or they have a lot of dramatic possibilities, I guess.
Well, in a lot of the paintings that I do, when I have a sweep across a painting, sometimes if you were to measure, that arm's just a little bit too long. Well, it's a little bit too long for a reason. Gives you that thrust.
A compositional reason.
Yeah, compositional reason.
After you returned from the Art Students League, did you develop a relationship with some Oklahoma Indian art galleries? Which ones did you
It took a
deal
while
with?
after that. When I got back from New York, I nearly starved to death for about a year, trying to apply what I had learned up there to what I was doing and trying to sell down here. I couldn't get it all together. It took a while to meld and become something that I could sell. The idea of painting for selling has to be there. It would be wonderful if I could just paint what I wanted to and not worry about it. Well, that's unrealistic. You paint paintings and they are on your own scale of what you want to do, but you have to look down the road. You have to look at this painting. Well, jeepers, is this painting going to appeal? If it's not going to appeal to people, maybe I should rethink it and maybe one of these days do it for myself, but not now.
So you were sort of trying to balance in your own mind this you had learned these new techniques, but when you were going, you continued going to shows, but you just hadn't worked out the right blend.
Mostly what I think I learned up there, and what I went up there to learn, was paint quality.
Without preconceived sort of formulas, or
Yes, ma'am.
without, I see.
Yeah, paint quality. And that's a difficult thing to define exactly, but I think you can look at a painting like some of these that we have here in the house and say, jeepers, look at the quality of that paint. And you look at the painting too, jeepers, look at the way you put it on there. That's what I was after.
Mm.
The paintings that I was doing up to that point were very flat. They could have been a print. They were so flat. You know, I knew something was missing, but I didn't know how to overcome it. Well, David LaFell had been down here giving a workshop in Oklahoma City, and I took it. And it really appealed to me. Nice man. So, you know, I basically just followed him to New York. Made arrangements, took about a year for me to get up there, but I went up there and I think I learned a lot. But more than that, going to the Metropolitan, they had a retrospective there of Van Gogh that stayed there for the whole time I was there. I mean, paint quality out the wazoo. And it was so fortunate because they had hundreds of his paintings there in chronological order.
Wow.
That he had done them. And you could watch the sanity of the man rise and fall through all these paintings. And we were able to get close enough to them, you couldn't touch them, but you could see what was going on, see the brush strokes and the grass that was in the paint, and how he had smeared things with his thumb and probably licked his thumb, which probably made him crazy. But that's what I went up there for, and that's what I came back with. It just took me a while to incorporate it into what I was doing. Made a lot of mistakes when I came back.
Which is, of course, how we learn. I do remember you having work at Shirley Wells's gallery, I think, Indian Territory Gallery in Sapulpa.
Bless her heart.
Was that one of the first Indian art galleries that you started taking work to, or?
I don't think so. We were showing in Santa Fe. Quite frankly, I don't remember the galleries that I was in out there. The Wadle Gallery, which I believe is still there.
Oh, yeah.
At Wadle.
Right.
The gallery up in Taos, Gallery A. Two or three other galleries I can't remember.
Right.
During that period.
But you kind of started with some out-of-state.
Yeah, and came back, and I don't remember exactly how I got into Shirley's gallery in Sapulpa.
In 1987, you won Grand Award at the Red Earth Festival, and shortly after that, first place at Santa Fe Indian Market. Did these awards feel, what was it like getting those awards?
I think the biggest award in a art show that I had won was the one at the Red Earth. Got the Grand Award in '87. It was first year race for Red Earth, and I won the first Grand Award.
That's right.
The greatest thing about that was that the judge was Alan Hauser and Dick West. Never really got to know Dick West, but we became very good friends with Alan Hauser, and were until he died. You know, a greater man there is not.
Oh.
For him to give me that award was just astounding and wonderful.
That is so neat to know. I really admire him too. Did you go out and visit them occasionally?
Never went out there. But we saw him a number of times over the years, and saw him at the market out there.
Right.
It was always delightful.
So, when did you and how did you meet Martha?
Martha and I met at the Oklahoma City Arts Festival in Oklahoma City, the old Oklahoma City Arts Festival, when it was down at the Civic Center.
Right.
And it had all those trees. that's where I first met Martha, and immediately was hit by the lightning bolt. But as it happened, she was married at the time, so there that went. And anyway, I got to know Martha because she was a picture framer and I was an artist. And so she started framing my pictures and paintings. And over the years, as it turns out, I had been in a divorce with my first wife, and Martha had divorced her husband. And so we were kind of both in that period of strangeness, and came together, and we dated each other for about 5 years and got married.
This is definitely a profession that takes two. In 1991, you received a commission from the State Arts Council to do the 5 Indian ballerinas, which you call Flight of the Spirit. How did you approach that project? Was that your first?
With astonishment. I'd never done anything that big.
Big mural, okay.
And it always comes to my mind that first commission that Alan Hauser did up at Haskell.
You were 36 when you decided to go to the Art Students League. And had you saved money to go there, or how did you manage to get there?
I had saved up a goodly amount of money because I was making a good living at the time with festivals and art shows like that. So I was able to take off the time that I spent up there without really worrying about it. As expensive as New York City is, I was able to do that. I was very fortunate.
And it was kind of an unusual setup in terms of a school.
The Art Students League is an art school, but it's not an academic school. They don't care if you go to class. You pay your fee monthly for the number of instructors you want to take, and you go if and when you want. You do the work, you go to the classes, you come and go as you please. They just didn't care. Very New York.
But that worked well for you.
Worked well for me. I have always been disciplined with that kind of a thing, so I knew I had to do it and wanted to do it, so I didn't waste any of the time that I had up there.
And one of your teachers was David LaFell.
My primary instructor was David LaFell. Also at the time, Dick Getz from Oklahoma City was teaching there, so I was able to spend a lot of time with Dick. I didn't take classes from him, but he and I spent a lot of time together. We've always liked each other, and so that was good. Knew somebody up there. But David LaFell had been down here in Oklahoma City for a workshop, and I took the workshop and discovered that he was doing things that I needed to learn how to do. And so I followed him about a year later to New York and went to the Art Students League.
And LaFell was really was a realist, a strong realist. What kinds of things did you learn from him that helped you? In a way, you ended up breaking free of that kind of realism.
The reason I went to New York was to learn paint quality in the work that I was doing. I was missing that particular aspect in my paintings. I was coming to realize that the paintings that I was doing, even though they were selling in this and that, they were not pleasing me, and there was something missing, and it was that quality of paint that I was after, and that's why I went to New York to go to school at my old age.
So how would you define paint quality? Is it just technique, or does it have to do with concept, or?
Well, it's a technique, but it has a lot to do with brushwork. And the paintings I had done before, even though they were on panel or canvas, they were as flat as a watercolor would be. And I wanted to get away from that. I felt like there was something physically, visually missing in my paintings, and it was that quality of seeing brushwork on a canvas and the way paint moves and rises from the canvas and moves and blends with another color next to it. I love that. the paintings that Martha and I collect, if you'll look at them, have that quality. They're mostly landscapes and like Walt Gonski, the way he used to paint, had really wonderful paint quality in the things that he did.
Yes.
I'm afraid he's been tasting his paint.
You mentioned going to the Met, and in particular a Van Gogh exhibit that really inspired you. What?
Yeah, I went to the Metropolitan a lot because it wasn't cheap. You still had to pay to get in, but it was cheaper than anything else up there you could do. And there was a Van Gogh retrospective there of hundreds of his paintings, and they were all hanging in chronological order so that you could watch the rise and fall of the man's insanity as he went through his life. Beautiful, absolutely gorgeous paintings. And we were able to stand close enough to them so that you could see the quality of the paint on the canvas and the way you could tell he was painting out of doors because there would be flowers and dust and grass mixed in with the paint.
Wow. So when you came back to Oklahoma, you began doing shows again, but did that just immediately take off for you, or?
No, it took about a year or so for me to kind of gather my thoughts and apply some of what I was using up there. I discarded some of what I was learning up there because it just didn't apply to what I wanted. The biggest thing that I gave up was giving up painting in oil paints. When I came back here, I went right back to acrylics, which I'll still paint with and really do love as a medium. So I had to get rid of some of the things that I'd learned up there because you cannot treat oil paints the same way you treat acrylics. And so I had to overcome some technical problems. It took me a while.
Tell me about how and when you met Martha.
Met Martha for the first time at the Oklahoma City Arts Festival when it was at the Civic Center downtown. She came through with a friend of hers, Greg Burns' wife, Pat. And she introduced us because Martha was a picture framer and I was a painter. And so we could, do business together. But at the time, Martha was married and so was, I had just been gotten divorced from my first wife. And as it turns out, Martha, in the next year or so, went through that same divorce and with her husband. And so it was after a period of a year or so after that we got together and she started framing my pictures and 5 years later we got married.
You had cultivated some gallery relationships, but I understand they were not in Oklahoma immediately once you came back.
No, the galleries that I was associated with were in Santa Fe or in Taos. The Gallery A in Taos and the Wadle Gallery in Santa Fe. And there were a couple of other galleries out there, but I can't bring their names to mind. They have since closed, so it really doesn't matter.
So you were doing native subject matter,
Yes.
but with this quality of paint that you had evolved for yourself. Were you incorporating landscapes at all in those paintings yet, or were they more?
During that period in early 80s, working up through there, most of the things that I were doing were figurative with not much of a background. The landscapes gradually creeped in as we were going more and more out to Santa Fe. That wonderful color out there.
Yes.
That the landscapes for a period of time overtook the figures. And then they kind of came back together and worked as
a unit
as a
again.
unit.
You did win first place at Red Earth
Uh-huh.
Arts Festival, and I imagine that was very gratifying. How did that feel?
That was the best experience that we have had from winning a prize. It was 1987 and the first year for Red Earth, and we won the first grand award. The greatest thing about it was that the judges for that show were Alan Hauser and Dick West. And from that time, which was the first time I met Alan Hauser, we became quite good friends, and it lasted until he died. And that was very wonderful.
I was, wondering what Native artists had kind of impacted you in some way, and Alan Hauser, I guess, would be one.
I think he would be the one. There are a lot of aspects of Indian art that don't appeal to me. I like to look at them and I like to study them as historic upbringing, or whatever you want to call it, because they were very important, the ledger paintings. I mean, how can you beat those? But I look at those not necessarily as wonderful art, but as bites of history that appeal to me. And over the years, we have become painters of history, I think. So you look at those things and you just have to admire them. I like to look at them. They don't appeal to me to do.
Right. They've already been done.
They've already been done.
And it is interesting how each generation has its own sort of recording of history to do, but in their own style. In 1991, you received a commission from the State Arts Council to paint the 5 Indian ballerinas from Oklahoma, which you call Flight of the Spirit. How did you approach that project?
Well, we initially were approached by the State Arts Council, Betty Price, to participate with a group of other artists. Don't remember exactly how many there were, 5 or 6 other artists, to do a proposal for an area in the Capitol, which was in one of the rotundas, half circle, 22 feet long, 12 feet high. Interesting shape.
Wow, yes.
They were pretty loose, which is a good thing. And what they asked us to do was to do a proposal based on these 5 ballerinas. That was it. So it left us a lot of leeway. And we came up with a good idea, I think. As it happens, the proposal that we did was on a panel, 12 by 24, I believe. 12 inches by 24 inches. Not real large, but that's kind of what they wanted. With the half circle drawn inside it and then the painting. As it turns out, on an ominous night, Saturday night, I had that panel on my easel, and Martha and I were going to go down the next day and I was going to sign it, and then the following day, which would have been a Monday, or 2 days next would have been a Monday, we were going to go and turn our painting in to the Arts Council for their consideration. That Saturday night at 11 o'clock, my studio burned down.
Wow.
Burned up that painting along with the studio.
My goodness.
So that was an interesting night. We didn't have any time to waste. So Sunday morning I got on the phone with Betty, and she knew about it because it was on the TV. She didn't know my painting was there. But we talked to Betty and got a two-day extension for turning in our proposal. So the very next day, which was a Sunday, we went to Hobby Lobby. No, it wasn't Hobby Lobby. I forget where we went, and bought the materials we need, and I painted the proposal again on our kitchen table since I didn't have a studio.
Wow.
And we turned it in, and we were fortunate and won the competition. I think you would know some of those other people who were competing. But it was the 5 ballerinas on stage, and then surrounding them were members of their particular tribe, man and woman behind each of the ballerinas, and there were little ballerinas on each end, and back in the background was a portrayal of the Trail of Tears. Like I said before, it kind of reminded me of that first commission that Alan Hauser did at Haskell.
Oh.
Remember, he told him he was a wonderful sculptor. He'd never sculpted anything. Well, I'd never done a big painting like this, and so it was quite a challenge, and it took us about 6 months to do.
Well, it's kind of trial by fire too, because I mean the curvature, it's challenging enough to do a mural, and then you're talking about dealing with a curve too.
Yeah, the shape of the canvas that we had to work with, provided some interesting compositional problems. But it was interesting because we were able to overcome that really quickly with the 5 ballerinas, because we recreated the half circle with them within the canvas. And so, putting everything around them, it worked out pretty well.
That was a wonderful way to handle that. And you've since really done a number of murals. That's pretty exciting, but I imagine, are you to the point where it's sort of not intimidating anymore to take on a mural?
Well, I really enjoy it. I've, come to, over the years, really enjoyed working on large canvases, painting people life-size or bigger, and it has proven to be benefit, because there aren't that many people who are willing to paint large paintings, and so we have slipped into kind of a group, I guess, that when large paintings need to be done, we're considered.
And do you start with drafts, sort of drafting or sketching preliminaries that are just sort of regular size, or?
Yeah, we do preliminary studies relative to the size of the large paintings, and they're all on smaller canvases that we have to have for approval.
Well, I understand that the fire in your studio was really a turning point for you career-wise, and in terms of some decisions you made about your personal life too. Can you explain how that impacted you?
Well, the fire was kind of cathartic in a way, that I was quite mad for about a day or less, but then realized pretty quickly that wasn't going to get me anywhere, and thought about it, and we were really fortunate because a friend of ours, Tim Fellow in Oklahoma City, had a building about a block away from where my old studio was, and he offered it to me for my use as long as I needed it, and so I was able to quickly get into a studio space. And we determined really quickly that I needed to make some changes, needed to make some changes. This was the time to do it. And the color palette that I had been using for the last 20 years, I dispensed with. It was filled with earth tones, earth colors, yellows, browns, blacks. And I still use those colors, but added to those colors now are bright yellows and bright reds and green. I thought I would never use green.
Yes.
and I have discovered you can do a lot with green. You can learn this, that you can make an incredible black with green and alizarin crimson.
Wow.
And it makes black, but it's full of color.
Right.
It's amazing.
Mm.
Anyway, made these decisions to dispense with those colors in that palette, move on, paint much, much larger. I had fallen into the trap of painting what I knew would sell. We had settled into canvas sizes of 12 by 24 small canvases, and it was the repetitiveness of that was getting on my nerves and making me worry because I knew it wasn't going to last. And so we got away from that, and we took a risk. We stopped painting for the market. There's that term, I read it somewhere.
Right, right.
And we started creating our own market, and it took a while, but it worked. So we developed into a particular, I think, style, for lack of a better word, and it incorporates to a degree very large canvases and lots of color.
Was that also the time when you sort of thought about moving out of state?
Well, Martha and I had decided that as soon as our last child went to college, moved out of the house, that we were going to get the hell out of Dodge. We had been living in Oklahoma City for 30 years, well, both of us, and we wanted something else. So we decided we were going to move into the country. Well, we thought about moving to Taos, which is where artists live, and we dispensed with that after one day of being there and driving around and discovering there were no zoning laws in Taos, New Mexico.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, don't ever move there. It's a wonderful place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. Then we found a wonderful, beautiful place in South Colorado, south and west of Colorado Springs in the Wet Mountain Valley. Beautiful, beautiful place. And we tried really hard to move there. And we looked up in Cody, Wyoming. We went up there and stayed there for a month and thought about that until we discovered that the winters up there last about 7 months. And so we dispensed with that, and we were driving back from somewhere, probably from an art show or something. And I looked at Martha, and she looked at me and said, "What in the hell are we doing? You know, we have overlooked something. We've overlooked Oklahoma." And so we came back home, and we put out feelers with several realtors up to Perry and Chandler and all in through all this area over here. As it turns out, the realtor from here in Perkins called us and said, "I got 40 acres. Maybe you want to come look at it." And so we came out here and fell in love with it and bought it, and Perkins went with it. We didn't know about Perkins, but we love it out here.
It's been a good place to do your art.
It's been a good place to live and do art, and I don't rely on people to walk into the studio and buy things. You know, that happens, but we don't need to live in the city. You know, people come up here from the city or from Tulsa, or they come from different places, you know, but it really doesn't matter where you live.
Well, it's beautiful. How did your project of portraying the Chickasaw elders come about?
We have become friends over the years with Bill Anatoly, governor of Chickasaw. Very wonderful man. And Martha and I have talked about for years and years and years about a way to paint some of the people that we had seen down in Ada, Kishpingo, and around. I don't remember exactly how we came up with the overall idea, but I went down one day and talked to Bill and said, "Bill, I would like," Bill in private, Governor Anatoly, that I would like to paint a series of paintings on our living elders. Not elders. I mean, there are a lot of photographs of elders going back to the removal. That wasn't what I wanted. But the living elders. And I started talking to him about it, and he held up his hands and said, "Mike, let's do it." Well, that's the way he is. He makes instant decisions. And I said, "But Bill, I hadn't told you everything I want to do." Let's do it. So we set up with Lona Barrick and their Department of Arts and Humanities, and working with them, because I didn't know all these people, they do, and working with Glenda Galvan, they were able to come up with a number of people that we would interview. Martha would take photographs, and we would do these interviews about their history, and we ended up doing 24 paintings, which I think turned out pretty good. And at the end of that, I talked to Governor Anatoly again and said, Governor, this is not going to do it. You know, I mean, we have all these, we've seen all these people, all these interviews, and I'm not going to paint them. He said, let's do 24 more. and so we did 48 paintings in all of these wonderful people.
So it was pretty much the tribe that identified for you people that...
Yes, like I said, we did not know them, and
Right.
so we needed a lot of help from a variety of people, maybe half a dozen or more people working with the Arts and Humanities Department, that they would gather the names of these people, and we would go and interview them. Not all of the people made paintings. Not that they were bad interviews or whatever, but for whatever reason, I just didn't feel like I could make a painting here. And that's one of the things that we concluded early on, that there were 2 or 3 aspects in these paintings that had to happen. One was, and the primary one was, that it had to be a good painting. And the second one was that my portrayal of this person had to look exactly like this person. That we concluded pretty quickly that if I were to paint one of these people and it didn't look like them, one of their neighbors was going to come and say, that doesn't look like you, and it would have ruined the project. So luckily I'm able to, fortunately, I'm able to capture likenesses. And so these paintings all look like who they are. They're all wonderful paintings. And like I said, some of the people, I couldn't do anything with them.
Well, there is that very strong realistic, some of the most realistic work I've seen you do. And on the other hand, there's such a nice, you know, of course, everything becomes symbolic in a painting, but you choose a attitude, or you choose a background, or you choose a posture even, that you know, really conveys the individuality of the person that you've painted in these portraits. And some of the choices, like the woman on the walker, I kind of got online and looked a little bit, seem like easier choices than others. I'm sort of wondering how you balanced all of that.
Well, a lot of it came from the interview, but some of the people were reticent to talk and reticent to look at you, look at me. And during these interviews, I would be sketching. Martha would be taking photographs, and she would take a couple of 100 photographs, sometimes more. And out of all those photographs, maybe 1, maybe 2 would be what I was after. But over the years, she has come to be able to see the same things in the same way that I do, and I see the things that she's looking for in photographs. So it works.
So the hundreds of photographs were collectively of the 24 people. You just took multiple photographs
Of
each
each
time.
person.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the way
To
it
give
worked,
you some choices about stance and
yeah, and the way it worked was we would also have facilitators with us, somebody that knew this person.
right.
Glenda Galvan came into play here very heavily because she knows all these people and she speaks Chickasaw.
Oh, cool.
And so we would go in, and after a while these people knew why we were there. They were very accepting from the very start. But having your photograph taken a lot is disturbing, especially to Indian people. And so Glenda would be over here talking to these people, and I'll be over here just sketching away and have this person start talking about their past. Again, a difficult thing for Indian people to do. And so what happened was that after a few minutes, Martha would be clicking photographs all around, all over the place. They would forget she was there. They would talk to me or they would talk to Glenda and start telling their story, get lost in it, and wonderful photographs come from it.
That is such an amazing body of work too, because you're talking about, now were these oil, these were not oil, these were acrylic portraits.
Acrylics.
But still, we're talking about 2 months, is that right?
Oh no,
Okay.
no. It took 2.5, 3 years.
I see, for the first set of 24.
No, for all of them.
For all of them?
Yeah.
So,
But bear in mind, I'm doing other things also. You know, I
Right.
wasn't doing that.
right,
Sometimes we would do 1 a month, sometimes 2 a month, sometimes 1 every 2 months. It would depend on when we were able to get together with these people.
right.
Because sometimes this person would get sick, you know, we wouldn't be able to go. We went down to Texas 2 or 3 times to gather people. Went all the way to Washington, D.C. to do one. So, you know, you can't do those weekly.
Right, right.
Plus it kind of wears you out.
Yes. What was how did you feel when the cultural center was opened and the portraits were unveiled?
Oh,
Yeah,
made me cry.
yeah.
You walk into the room, and it was interesting because the first 24, we never saw them all together for a long time. We would see 1 or 2 of them at a time. And so walk into that room and see all 24 of them there, it was just astounding.
Kind of like an emotional
A
homecoming.
very emotional homecoming, it was. And some of the people were there. Several of the people had died in the interim. But that was the wonderful thing there, that we were able to portray these people. Before that, a couple of the people died just within a month after we painted the painting. And we might not have gotten that.
How about the families and the people themselves? What was their response?
Well, the families were families. We became part of that family with each one of those people's. And that was gratifying and heartwarming and comforting. Charlie Carter prayed over us. An astounding history of that particular man. But we were all in his house and he prayed over us in Chickasaw. Never been prayed over like that. And I don't know what he said. I know what he said, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. And then, you know, it just went on and on. And when we had our first showing at the History Center, all these 24 paintings in there, and there were family members there, sons and daughters and all those people, a lot of people. And one man came over and grabbed me by the arm and said, "Brother, come and let's take a picture with Mama." Mama was in the painting.
Wow.
And I've never been called brother by somebody who is not my brother. It's very, very big. And those people were accepting of us when they did that. And we still run into these people after the series has been done. You know, they walk up and say, "Brother, come."
That's wonderful. I'm going to shift a little bit to talking about your philosophies and sort of practices in art today. And I'd like to talk a bit about the sort of larger than life hands that you use in your portraits. And what was one of your inspirations for developing that?
That developed when I went to the University of Houston. When I went down there, followed this sculpture professor there because he was renowned and all that, and I was going to learn a lot. I did. But I went to Houston because I had planned on making my life as an artist, as a sculptor. And down there, studying the way we had to study, he wanted us to look at history, the history of sculpture. We all studied Michelangelo and Rodin, and those two in particular, if you'll look at them, they made the hands of their people quite large. The most notable one would be the Michelangelo sculpture of the young David. The hands are way too big. And I just loved it. And so we all did that. I mean, you know, here you have a classroom full of students all doing sculptures with big hands. And so when I got into painting more, it just kind of naturally flowed into the paintings. And it also provides, we discovered, a certain visual dimension, an immediate visual dimension within a painting. It's like holding your hand close to a camera. All of a sudden, the hand is bigger than it should be. Do you see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's that kind of thing that when you make a hand a little bit bigger in a canvas, all of a sudden it has a depth. And nobody understands why.
Right.
Well, I'm not going to tell them. I just do.
And then, of course, that requires scaling the arms in a painting a little bit differently, too.
Sometimes, one thing that we discovered, especially in this series for the Chickasaws, and doing these older people, that as people get older, they tend to grow closer to the floor. So some of these people that we painted were shorter than me, when in their youth they were taller. And so their spines may contract and all this kind of stuff, and they may get a little closer to the ground, but their arms are the same length. And one individual in particular that we paid attention to was that she could almost touch her knees with her fingers, because of their, getting old.
Right.
But her arms were the same length and wonderful hands. And if we had shortened her arms to match her height, it just would have been wrong.
Right.
And sometimes I use that extra length in arms or hands to sweep across a canvas, but that's for purpose, for guidance or for design, composition, whatever. But I do it on purpose. And I know the dimensions, I know the measurements. So I'm able, or I can, expand them if I want to.
You've done a number of series. Does that allow you to sort of explore a subject in more detail? Besides the Chickasaw paintings, I know that you've done some series paintings. What are the advantages of sort of doing a series?
Well, it helps you to, a lot of times if you do a painting, somebody will come and say, well, I want a painting on this and this, or this particular period of history. Well, a painting just won't do it. There's too much, and if you try and put too much in a painting, it becomes so complicated that it can become boring if you're not careful. Paintings, you need a focus in a painting. You can surround it with other stuff, but you need a focus in a painting. So doing a series gives you an opportunity to develop an idea that might include many, many different aspects of a particular group of people. We did a series of paintings, very large paintings, for the Potawatomi people up in Michigan. They 8 paintings. They were 8 feet tall, about 20 feet long, 8 of them. And it was about Potawatomi history. Again, what came into play here was that we were contracted to do this because we paint large paintings. They have many good Potawatomi artists, but they don't paint large paintings. And so they contracted us to do that, so it really suited me because I was able to get into their history, going back into ancient history up to present day, powwow. And so we were able to, in these 8 paintings, go back hundreds of years, maybe thousands, and do 8 paintings of their history up to present day. And I was delighted with the way it turned out because it gave me the opportunity to really, really get into the meat of what those people are about.
So what kinds of research did you do for that project?
Well, we were provided with an elder who we became very good friends with, and he was my guide. And I had many, many conversations with him and went up to Michigan more times than I want to ever go again. and so talked to him about this or that, and he walked me through it. And we talked, like I said, many, many times about what the paintings might be, what was important to them, what their culture was like, how it developed. And he was very knowledgeable and guided me through it. And I would come up with all these ideas, we'd talk on the phone, and he said, I don't like that, so I wouldn't do it. And I had to pretty much rely on him because, every tribe is different.
Right.
He was quite good at that. And I would do the studies, did 8 studies, and took them up to be approved by their council. It was quite a process. Art by committee is always difficult. And I took these paintings up there and I had to please 420 people, and that's difficult.
Yes.
I had to please 20 Indian people, which is more difficult. So they came back at me about a thing or two, and there were 2 or 3 of the people that didn't like my paintings or didn't like me, but overall it worked out. We were able to get it done. It took a couple of years to do. Very big paintings, and they're up there now, and they'll be there for a while.
That's always a process, I think, and especially when you're an artist of one tribe depicting another tribe. Did you sort of go through a similar thing with the Quartz Mountain Institute murals?
As a matter of fact, but these were with Kiowa people.
Right.
Kiowa's beautiful people. I mean, look at the Black Wagon Society. We were fortunate to deal with some people like Dixon Palmer, the Palmers,
Mm-hmm.
the Palmers, and wonderful people. But early on, we ran into some difficulties because, again, there were Kiowa people's artists who, weren't real happy with me. Not because they knew me, but because I was not Kiowa. And so we had to talk to them and go through a process and get through that. And as it turned out, they were happy with what I did. You have to be careful.
Yes.
You have to be very careful. That's why you need guides from the tribes,
Right.
competent elders who I prefer dealing with elders, quite frankly, than younger artists in a situation like that. Because the elders deal with the overall picture, and they are aware of their history, and they have no ego to deal with. So we were happy with the paintings, the Kiowa paintings, and they were too. So it worked out.
I think it's really wonderful how you started out wanting to be a sculptor, and then painting became really the primary focus of your art. And then you're sort of coming back around. It's still primary, but you're doing a lot of sculpture. I'm wondering if your mural work has facilitated or better enabled you to sort of take on some of these monumental sculpture
I think so. Painting, the way we try and sculpt is painting in clay. And doing these large paintings, oversized paintings, is a real benefit. I think. You don't deal in color, but you do deal in contrast and light and shadow and all of these form things that you deal with in painting, just a different way of looking at it.
Right.
But we talk about the sculpture every once in a while about the brush strokes in the clay, and people look at that and say, well, what the hell are you talking about? Well, you understand, because you've been in art all these years, what I mean,
Right.
about brush strokes in clay.
Just sort of that hands-on, sort of immediate contact
Yeah.
with the material. What do you enjoy about the sculpting process?
I think I just covered that.
You might have.
I love when we look at building a sculpture piece, like the large piece we did for the hospital in New Jersey. They wanted us to keep a running daily documentary. And so we documented the thing photographically.
Martha did that.
Martha did that. From the very first day when I built the armature, which is just wire, first layers of clay, which looked like Don Quixote, no clay, nothing. And the development is what I enjoy about working in sculpture. I love seeing that.
It's so concrete when you see it. Can you describe your creative process for me, just from the genesis, maybe for painting or sculpture, or either one?
Describe the creative process.
Yes. In the case of commission work, there's more of an external.
I'll tell you what, some of my best paintings have come from church. This has happened before. I'll dig Martha and say, Martha, you got a pencil?
Is this in church when you're in church?
This is in church when we're listening to the sermon or the homily or whatever, somehow I kind of go away, and so I'll just sketch down an idea really quickly that just kind of washes through your mind, like that painting of the cranes, and do a real quick little sketch, bring it home, tack it up on the wall, and it might not become anything for a year, 2 years, and then one day you're walking by it and you see what you saw that you may have forgotten, becomes a painting. And so real quickly you do a sketch, bigger sketch, and then you put it on the canvas, and most times it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's difficult to describe.
So rather than writing down a concept or a title, what you've got is a quick little sketch that you might just put somewhere on the wall or in a book, or.
And sometimes those sketches are so obscure that I, look at them a week later and I just can't figure out what the hell they are. And so I keep them. They're still up on the wall, and one of these days, they might become something. But not that the sermons are dull or anything like that, but they might say something. Or one of our best paintings came from a furniture store out in somewhere, the hardware store. We were walking down the aisle, and here's this green couch over here with a red lamp right beside it, and I saw it from just in my periphery. I'm not going to tell you what it said, but I grabbed something and then sketched it down, and it became this guy with a red bandana with a green cloak flowing across the painting. It became one of our best paintings.
Wow.
And it was couch and a lamp. That's the creative process, I guess. I cannot explain.
Yes.
I think it may be maybe being able to recognize something. I don't know what.
We've kind of talked about your work with the Chickasaws as being sort of an emotional homecoming, and I'm wondering, do Do you think of yourself as an artist who happens to be Indian? Do you think of yourself as an Indian artist? Do you?
It's the first one. I'm an artist. I happen to have an Indian heritage. And it has blossomed over the years because of our relationship with all these people down in Ada, that their history is becoming more and more important to me all the time. And I was, like I told you earlier, I was kind of a late bloomer because I did not spend any time with my father, who was Chickasaw. And so I had to kind of develop it from a need of my own. And the need that Martha and I both felt when we were doing this series was fulfilled because we became part of 48 families. Those people know us, talk to us. And you know, we became a part of their life. We learned things about them that in some instances their families didn't know about until they told their story. And we happened to be there when they told it. Well, that's a blessing to be a part of that. And you know, becoming so familiar with these people that you don't know
Yes,
is
to
wonderful.
shared in those histories and be passing those on. You have done 2 books together, They Know Who They Are and Proud to Be Chickasaw. Did you have a book at the back of your mind when you started the process, or how did the idea of a book develop?
Well, doing the paintings was first, working that out with Governor Andrew Tubby, and then I got together with Lona Barrick, and pretty quickly after that idea, before the first painting was done, they said, we're going to be needing to make a book out of this. Their history,
It was kind of like a collective reaction. It was like everybody's response.
Several meetings with those people down there. I'm not real fond of meetings, but you know, several people around the table, everybody talking at once, and all you want to do is leave. But some good ideas came out of it, and the book and the concepts there came up, and that's where that came from.
And I understand you're in the Chickasaw Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Is it a portrait or is it a photo? I assume it's not a self-portrait.
What?
Do they have a picture of you there too, or just a
Yeah, it's I don't know how they did those.
photograph?
We have a photograph
Yes.
of me.
That's very cool. Looking back on your career, is there any so far? Is there any highlight moments that we might not have discussed?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. I would say that the mural in the Capitol was the most important thing that happened to us. It could have been because of the time that happened. It kind of projected us, gave us a jump start in a way to do that very large painting, have it in the Capitol. We have the best spot in the whole Capitol for that thing to be hanging.
Right.
You walk up the steps and that's what you see. And so that was wonderful. It provided us with a good amount of money, but it also, which allowed me to do some things that I'd wanted to do that I had not done. But I think the recognition that we have received because of that has been our greatest event, art-wise. You know, we have some other things, like the big sculpture in New Jersey and those paintings for the people up in Michigan and stuff like that, bigger projects, but maybe not more important.
It sort of started with that.
Yeah. And it was in '91, and that was a very pivotal period for us, I think.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about that we haven't discussed, or
No.
anything you'd like to? Okay. Well, we are going to take a look at some of your artwork here.
Okay. This painting is one of the religious paintings, or works of art that I do, and Martha modeled for this. This is the Assumption of Mary that Martha has modeled for us. She made the clothes. Very good model.
I love the color.
Has not been for sale, never will be. We did this for ourselves.
And that's tough to be able to keep paintings for yourself. We're gonna shift over to this Tecumseh.
When we were showing at the Ray Tracy Gallery in Santa Fe, we did a series of paintings one year on the great leaders, Indian leaders of history. Tecumseh was one of those. This is a portrayal of him. We found this screen that he was standing in front of, and so I put it in behind him in the painting. So Tecumseh is really in the painting twice. You can see him and his brother.
Right.
And the man on horseback, the face on the man on horseback is Jackson.
Right.
Put his face on there because he was a nasty
Mm-hmm.
fellow. And it's interesting because on the screen, Jackson is shooting the Tecumseh on the screen back there, but it looks like he is also shooting Tecumseh in the foreground. I don't know, it was interesting the way it worked out. That was an accident, I did not intend that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love
Maybe I did, but.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I love the picture of Jackson's face there. Let's see if I can get that a little bit better. Okay, and now
And this painting did not sell in that series of Santa Fe, so we were very happy to
yes,
get the painting back.
yes. Sometimes you actually try to jinx stuff. I know we do.
This is interesting because that is my grandfather that I lived with in Wynnewood. Sharecropper, old guy, smoked a lot, smelled like Vitalis and Camel cigarettes. But I sold this painting back in the mid-70s, 75, 76, something like that, to a lady in Oklahoma City. And at the time, I really wanted to keep the painting, but I really needed the money. So I sold it to this woman with the stipulation, and I was kind of kidding in a way, but I said, if you die, I want that painting back. Well, here about 4 years ago, she died and willed me this painting back.
Oh my goodness.
And so we got it back. And very, very happy to have it.
What a wonderful story. Well, Mike, I thank you so much for your time
You're
during
welcome.
this interview.
Thank you.